everybody, Nicole here from the GYST Method, and as always, I am joined by
Kirby James from the GYST Method, and we have something really interesting for you today. We were just having a conversation over lunch, which was delicious.
So good.
And we realized that there's this pattern, and we just had to talk about it because it picks up on our last episode about predictive bias.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do want to try and bring attention to is the fact that oftentimes an organization where change is required, but not being led yet, you will start to see sort of a ground swelling, if you will. So
that's a nice word.
Right? So what that means is all of a sudden, as a senior leader, you'll start to hear from sort of the middle management or some of the frontline workforce bringing more suggestions forward about what needs to change. So the language starts to get a little bit more
urgent,
precisely. And also, if it's not addressed and people don't see and feel like they're being heard, some of the activities will actually start to go covert and under, the radar, because change is so desperately needed that people are either going to get it done no matter what, or despite senior leadership's plans, or they're going to go.
Yeah, and then the worst of that second they're going to go is they quit and they stay.
Yes. Oh, we should talk about that in depth in a different
that's a whole nother episode.
But quitting and staying is the worst because people have checked out. They don't care. There's no initiative. They're not engaged. They're just showing up and punching in and punching out.
Yeah, and it becomes very transactional.
Yeah.
The scenario we're talking about, though, is this situation where, and I've either seen it, admittedly been part of it, where you're looking at the organization and there are things that are just either non-existent or broken so bad. And when you get passionate, competent people, and it doesn't matter what their stripe or flavor, vocation or interest is, they will look at this and say, this isn't okay, it needs to be different. And they will start to do things because, hey, you went out of your way to hire good people. Right?
Yeah.
And then they're going to start to do stuff. Now, usually what happens is they run into the inertia of the organization, which is where a lot of them quit and stay.
Yep.
Or they quit and leave.
Altogether.
They quit and leave.
Yeah.
That is, when you're a senior leader, and you start to not just hear this once off or twice off, it starts to become a bit of a pattern. What's the question you should be asking yourself?
Yeah, and to that, we often see two different reactions. One of which, for organizations that we can see from the outside are not going to excel, the senior leader will react in a very defensive way.
What's your problem?
Yeah, what's your problem? You start to see or hear things like, don't worry about that, it's under control. You focus on what you need to focus on. I'll take care of it. Like, it's very defensive.
Yeah, but the reality is if I'm in charge of finance or human resources or whatever it may be, and I'm trying to get my job done, and I am bumping into structures, systems, mindsets, and it's like, I can't do what I need to do because it's so messed up.
Yeah.
That reassurance means jack.
No. And then for organizations where senior leaders actually take this seriously and have enough self-awareness to recognize that something is starting to shift, I don't want to say the smart CEOs, but the self-aware CEOs ask themselves the question, what am I missing?
And this feeds into our last episode where we talked about predictive bias. And for me, it actually goes even a step further, which is to talk about, these are leaders who have resilience. They're resilient in their confidence in themselves.
Right.
Yet at the same time, they're confident enough in themselves to be open to the possibility that they're missing something.
Oh, I'll take that even one step further. They work on the assumption that other people have information that they need.
Beautiful. This is the kind of senior leader you want to rally around. Someone who is genuinely curious, not knotted up in their ego and constantly like they pretend like they're all confident, but they're actually just haunted by their doubts and fears. That's I mean, my heart goes out to folks who are in that position. Yet at the same time, I mean, when you see somebody who's able to say, so tell me more about that.
Absolutely.
That's like, now I have, and we look at these people as we're evaluating clients. That's actually for us one of the telltale signs that you are our people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more than just understanding that you need to ask the question. You need to develop that genuine curiosity to see another perspective.
Absolutely.
It's not just, okay, I asked, tell me what you think. Tell me more, and all of these other like standard check the box questions, and then turn around and do whatever you think you need to do anyway. It's taking a deep breath and going, okay, Kirby normally has all these great suggestions and things are flowing really well and everything's great, but all of a sudden he won't get off a particular point because there's something there. Hey Kirby, what's going on? What am I missing?
And you hit on a really interesting point. So years ago, I was lucky enough to actually have a communication coach, Bart Egnell, who's now running a large communications firm, which is amazing, by the way. And one of the things he was coaching me on was, I thought I had been somewhat learned in the skill of listening. And what he showed me was I was going through the process of listening.
Right.
But I wasn't actually letting the stuff come in. I had a whole bag of yeah buts in behind to basically argue and refute what was being said. And that's not what you're talking about.
No.
What you're talking about is a leader who genuinely can push stuff out to the side. It's like, I want to hear what Nicole has to say, and I'm actually going to hear it.
Yeah. I mean, to be an effective leader, it's not only I need to inspire, I need to engage, I need to show the way, lead by example, but an effective leader also understands that they don't ever have all of the information. They're a human being. We're only one person. And everyone around me has a different perspective, point of view, experience that can add to the bigger picture, because I can't be in 20 places at once.
Well, no. And actually, I actually think that modeling leadership behavior, that's actually what they are doing when they're open to these ideas.
Absolutely. It's leading by example.
Right. And so, I mean, this is actually a cornerstone philosophical idea. It's in religions, it's in like just philosophy, it's in martial arts philosophy, which is, there's a very famous ancient Asian story about a guy who comes to talk to a wise man, and he's full of yeah buts. And so the wise man brings out a cup of tea. And he says, would you like tea? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. And he starts pouring the tea, and he keeps pouring, and he keeps pouring, and there's tea going all over the floor. And the guy looks at him and is like, what are you doing? And he says, well, you're this cup. If you're full, how can anything come in? How can you taste the tea when you've concluded that you already know what it tastes like?
Interesting.
And it's one of the oldest concepts, it really is that in order to actually learn something, you need to have this beginner's mindset.
Absolutely.
And senior leaders are like that. I think the best senior leaders all get this idea. And they're full of predictive biases and other biases, and it's hard. I get it. I've been there. You've been there. We've all had to do it.
I was just going to say, so if we go with the understanding, if we go the other way and give an example of what happens when a CEO actually isn't open to, I might be missing something, when you start to see that groundswell of change happen, the damage it can do to an organization's culture not only can be long-lasting, but it can happen fast.
Absolutely.
I mean, within months, you can have this upheaval, because individuals, we're human beings, we like to share and relay stories to one another, and unfortunately, negative experiences are shared most. Can you believe this? And this happened here, and I was treated this way. We very often sort of combine our negative experiences together.
And it's fascinating, because this yet again is another dimension of your mental discipline.
Yes.
A lot of us can be like a moth to the flame.
Yes.
Think of your Facebook friends, right? You know, the ones that are constantly in crisis and posting stuff, you're looking at them more than the people who are happy and having a great time.
That's right.
Right? So there's a certain amount of choice and mental discipline that goes like that. You're absolutely right. When the senior leaders see the symptoms and the signs that there's disquiet below, meaning in the hierarchy of the organization, and it's not taken to be a really big deal.
Yeah.
My experience, and we worked at a company where this was true, it doesn't get better all by itself. And unless there's comprehension and a real sincere plan to do something about it, it usually goes from bad to worse.
Yeah, and the thing is too, it's so easy to not just mitigate, but to correct a situation like that. It comes down to making time to actually speak to people, hear them, decide that what they have to say is relevant, because from their perspective, there's something going on that they need to bring up.
Yet so many of those executives will say, I don't have the time for this, I'm so busy. When the reality is, and we've talked about this at length, if they went and looked at their calendar, and they went and looked at what was happening with email, and they looked at the amount of stuff that they're involved with that they really either don't need to be or should not be involved with because they're disempowering next level managers, they actually would have more time.
Absolutely.
And if as a leader I haven't prioritized understanding what the organization, how healthy it is, then I'm actually behaving not as a leader. Now I'm going back to an MIT Harvard definition. I'm being a manager. Right? Not a leader. A leader inspires change and provides direction and purpose. A manager works out the minutia. And when you're in a leadership position and behaving as a manager, you're actually doing both jobs badly.
Absolutely. The other thing that I would recommend just keeping an eye out for, so again, we always want to give some actionable and practical recommendations, is to take a look at the management circle that is around you. So say you are the most senior person, you are the CEO, you are the president. If all of the senior leadership team that reports to you is constantly, everything's great, everyone's happy, there's no, like, everything's on track, no worry, it's no, I'm sorry. Again, organizations are filled with human beings. I'm not saying that everything needs to be the sky is falling or there's constant fear of what's going on. But there needs to be a practical discussion about what is actually going on. Otherwise, by the time you try and chase after it, the culture's been established for months and sometimes years. I've had conversations with senior leaders and CEOs that literally the culture has been deteriorating and has become so negative and volatile for years, and they had no idea. That's irresponsible.
And so a practical example of when this is done well, and I'm going to actually use a boss I had. She was the CEO of the organization, Marguerite Jackson. And I learned so much through the observation of the way she led. Very mechanical, very structured with her meetings. Excuse me. Not only that, she had a web of people at every level of the organization, and she wanted to hear either what they thought or what they had heard, because there was this relentless triangulation about how things are. Some of it was political, in fairness, but a lot of it was basically, this is an initiative we had launched. How is it actually coming across? I need to know, because while I've got my executive layer of trusted advisors, I also know they have biases, and I also know that there are a certain number of filters in there, and I need to know. And Marguerite was absolutely fantastic at that.
Which is excellent. So one thing I think in closing this off, what we want senior leaders to hear and understand is that it is okay to take on that information. It's okay to seek out more information than what you currently have access to. And it is also okay to recognize the fact that you may have some prediction bias going on. And if you can simply just slow down and ask yourself, what am I not seeing? What am I missing? What is the piece that I don't have yet? And keep that curiosity. You're more likely to put yourself, your team, and your organization in a position of strength, especially in times of change. Because in the last few episodes, and we're going to continue, we keep talking about what you can do now, to prepare for the next 18, 24 months?
Absolutely. According to Forbes magazine, the world's foremost influential management consultant is Roger Martin, the former dean of the Rotman School of Business. I am a student of Rogers, and when he launched his lecture series on what is now known as a book called The Opposable Mind, this was actually, or the integrative thinker, this was actually the core of what he discovered with a team of PhD researchers going out to hundreds of the best leaders in the world, was that what we're talking about is what they do. They intensely work on the premise that they are trying to come up with the best decision, the best insights, and they know they're missing information. And they go up and down this ladder of seeking out information, particularly contrary opinions.
Yes.
Working from the position that what if they're right?
Yep.
Integrating it, then cross-referencing, cross-checking, and they're constantly moving up and down this ladder of gather information, process information, draw conclusions, and go up and go down and go up and go down, because they value what we're talking about, which is they value that they have limitations. They value that they have biases, and they're not satisfied with either simplistic or echo chamber kinds of reactions. And they want to know because of the importance of their role.
Yeah. And don't forget, just because someone's suggestion or recommendation seems like it's out of left field and has nothing to do with what you're talking, take a minute and ask, how did you get to that conclusion? What's the process? You might be missing something.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you know, so many of the greatest discoveries in humanity, so many of the most wonderful philosophical origins have all come from this place of trying to set aside what you think you know and be open to what might be possible.
Absolutely. So we hope that discussion that came out of our lunch help somebody out there. As always, please feel free to reach out to us either by leaving some comments in the description or in the comment section below. Send us an email if you have any questions or something you would like us to address here on the show.
Yes.
But as always, I'm Nicole from the GYST Method.
And I'm Kirby James, and wanting to give out a great big thank you to the senior leaders I've had the privilege to observe who embody what we talk about. You were the best teachers I had along my journey.